So the Communist International formed formally, I believe, in 1919. You have to keep in mind, so there were three internationals. During Marx's lifetime, he formed the International Working Men's Association, and it was the IWA, the first international it was called. It collapsed after Karl Marx and the anarchists kept fighting with each other, couldn't get along. After Marx's death, followers of Karl Marx based in Germany and other European countries, they formed the Second International. Originally, there's two of them. There's the Marxist one and the non-Marxist socialist one. Eventually, they merge. And they have the Second International. And that's the Second International, by the way, is still, it's not technically around anymore. There's an entity called the Socialist International that's made up of all the old Second International parties. It's the British Labour Party, the French Socialist Party, the German Social Democratic Party. I believe for a while, I don't think they're affiliated anymore, but the DSA of the United States. It's the old Social Democratic parties. It's the Second International, right? In the lead up to the First World War, the Second International, all the parties promise that they're not going to go to war with each other. They'll never vote for a capitalist war. They'll make war against the capitalists. They'll turn their guns around. They'll never have a capitalist war. Well, World War I breaks out, and the Germans vote for war credits, and the French, they do, and you have to dissolve the Second International because all the parties are at war with each other in Europe. World War I is breaking out. And Lenin is furious about this. And he says the Second International is a stinking corpse. And he writes, his book Imperialism has a lot about the aristocracy of labor and why the Second International betrayed the revolution. And so, after the Russian Revolution, 1919, it's determined that because the Bolsheviks have taken power, because there are uprisings going on in Hungary and Germany and other places, they're going to form the Third International, the Comintern, the Communist International. That's in 1919. And at first, it's chaos. A lot of different parties are trying to join. Daniel De Leon and the Socialist Labor Party of the United States try to join. There's all kinds of things. In the USA, there's two different parties that try to claim they're the official Communist International Party. There's the Communist Party, which is mainly immigrants and non-English speakers, and there's the Communist Labor Party, which is English speakers only, and it's it's the CLP and the CP, and they together, and the Comintern recognizes neither of them, and the Socialist Labor Party doesn't get recognition, and it's utter chaos. And the first Congress of the Communist International opens with Lenin, and he has a moment of silence in honor of Rosa Luxemburg. Rosa Luxemburg. And Rosa Luxemburg is, she's the leader of the Spartacus Bund, or the Spartacus League of Germany. And, she's killed in the aftermath of the German Revolution in January of 1919. So it's big events. Big events. And the Communist International is formed, and it becomes kind of chaotic. And Lenin writes a book called Left-Wing Communism, an Infantile Disorder, urging the various parties of the Communist International to be sensible. Because a lot of the people that joined the Communist International, like the Bolsheviks and like the Russian Revolution, purely because they had a violent revolution. They don't like the Social Democrats because they don't have violent revolutions. Hey, look, the Bolsheviks had a violent revolution, so we like them. And it's a big problem. And Lenin is constantly giving speeches to these people explaining that the Bolsheviks are not just, that's not what they're about. They're not just, they had a violent revolution, but they're about a lot more than that. Eventually, the Communist International establishes the 21 points for membership. And it's pretty strict. The South African Communist Party, very famously, tries to join the Communist International. And what does their platform say? It says that they're a party that fights for white people and white rule in South Africa. Well, the Communist International says, nope, can't do that. You cannot join the Communist International. So they don't. right? I mean, so eventually they form another party. South African Communist Party has to be anti-racist. It cannot believe in white supremacy. Very famous incident that happens. What else? Well, they force the USA, the Communist Labor Party and the Communist Party USA, they force them to merge into one party. And we don't have a U.S. affiliate of the Communist International until 1921. What else happens? Lenin writes this very important book that's distributed to all the Communist International parties called Left-Wing Communism and Infantile Disorder. He gets very angry at Sylvia Pankhurst. Do people know who Sylvia Pankhurst is? She was the leader of the suffragist movement in Britain. She was one of the main feminists in Britain who was fighting for the right of women to vote. And, you know, at the time in Britain, there's this thing called the Zinoviev letter, right? The Conservative Party in Britain is going after the British Labour Party. The British Labour Party is the Social Democratic Party. It's at that point it's a lot more radical than it is today, but it's still, they're not communists or revolutionaries. They're just kind of socialist, social democratic reformists. But Lloyd George and the British Conservatives hate the Labour Party. So they announce that the Labour Party are agents of the Russians. Right? It's almost like, what they're doing with Trump and Russiagate. It's the Zinoviev letter. They forge a letter. It's a forgery. It's a fake. A letter from Zinoviev, leader of the Bolsheviks, to prove that the Labor Party are agents of the Bolsheviks with the Zinoviev letter. And they have it all over the newspapers and all there. The Bolshevik, the Labor Party are a bunch of agents of the Russians. They're working for the Bolsheviks. And they're having like a witch hunt, a McCarthyite campaign against the Labor Party. And Lenin is saying, well, now is the moment that the British working class, the British communists need to defend the Labour Party from this witch hunt. And they need to maybe endorse the Labour Party in the elections strategically to protect it from this McCarthyite witch hunt allegation. But Sylvia Pankhurst hates the Labour Party because they're a bunch of sellouts and phonies. They don't believe women should have the right to vote. So she... No. She thinks they should celebrate the campaign against the Labour Party because they're awful. And Lenin's saying, no. You got to support the Labour Party. You got to support the Labour Party. This is the quote from Lenin. The way a rope supports a hanged man. Basically, he's saying if you want to effectively destroy the politics of the British Labour Party, you got to endorse them in the elections. The idea is to get the workers in the Labour Party to listen to you. You need to endorse them, right? If there's this witch hunt against them from Lloyd George and from the British Conservatives. So if you want the Labour Party to listen to you want all the working class people that are seeing the party that is tied to their unions to listen to you, you got to endorse the Labour Party. Very interesting. That's the argument. And Lenin comes out with the policy of the United Front, where he's saying, okay, at that point, all the social democrats, all the socialist parties have a ban on communists. If you're a communist, if you support Lenin, you support the Bolsheviks, you're not welcome. So Lenin says, okay, so what we ought to do is we ought to try to have, strikes and national days of action and protests around things that the anarchists can agree with, that the social democrats can agree with, and the communists can agree with. And we'll have unity in action, difference in ideology. Try to build the united front. Try to get the workers' movement in motion. And maybe in the process, we can get, people that are social democrats or people that are anarchists or anarcho-syndicalists to listen to us. So Lenin's fighting for the policy of the United Front. The early Comintern is made up of ultra-left factions, mainly. People that were attracted to the Bolsheviks because they had a violent revolution. Interestingly, William Z. Foster, who went on to become probably the most famous and most effective American communist leader, when the Communist International was formed, he had no interest in being in it. Why? He was the leader of the steelworkers' strike. 1919, 365,000 steelworkers were on strike, and William Z. Foster was leading them. But he was doing it as part of the American Federation of Labor, and the ultra-lefts in the early Communist Party denounced the American Federation of Labor. They said, oh, that's a sellout union, it's not real. So the Communist Party was very hostile very hostile to this strike that William Z. Foster was leading. And William Z. Foster was called to the White House, and Woodrow Wilson begged him to call off the strike. And according to William Z. Foster's memoirs, Woodrow Wilson assumed that because William Z. Foster was a steel worker, that he must be stupid. So Woodrow Wilson spoke to William Z. Foster in roughneck talk. "This here strike you're having, Mr. Foster, this is not good for our country." Woodrow Wilson was very condescending and all that. But William Z. Foster was leading the steelworkers strike. And the people in the USA that were aligned with the communists didn't like the strike. They called William Z. Foster E.Z. Foster, for sellout, for so William Z. Foster, had no interest in the Communist International. Then, after the strike failed, the Bolsheviks invited Lenin to the Bolsheviks invited William Z. Foster to the Soviet Union, and he found out that Lenin had been urging the American communists to support the strike and had been disagreeing with their policy. So eventually, William Z. Foster, he sees that the communists, actually do have the correct position and wanted to support the strike. So he joins. It's very interesting. I guess you want to know about the founding of the Communist International. I hope, Arthur Porter, if you're watching, that does answer your question.